I think we're live. All right, man. Hey, everybody.
What's up?
Thanks for tuning in. I'm Ramboshi, your host here, and we have J Bravo with us today. This is JEDIOSHI Warrior Trading, our first YouTube video of all time. And we just want to introduce JEDIOSHI to you. It's a planned training group where we want to train people to learn charts, learn trading, learn how to read a chart, what a chart says, how to use some indicators, and develop their own trading system so that you can become a JEDIOSHI warrior. J Bravo, how are you doing today?
Doing great, buddy. Glad to be here, man.
Good. Me too, man. Hey, give us a background on your story, briefly, on how you got into trading and like how's that gone for you?
Well, I mean, people will eventually find out you and I go a long ways back. So really I've always been basically a passive trader, investor in like your standard like 401ks, retirements, IRAs, that kind of stuff. And I think we had a conversation towards the end of the 2017 bull run. In fact, it probably started like January 2018. You were dabbling around the crypto area, and I think you saw some pretty unique opportunities. And so you offered that to me, and I think together we made a few trades, got into a few coins, and like many people got completely wrecked.
Digibyte.
Digibyte, Litecoin. What were some of them? Civic. Yeah, the old boys.
BitConnect.
And I had no idea what I was doing. Literally none. I wasn't a trader. I wasn't an active trader. I didn't understand what crypto was. I didn't understand any of it, but I thought it was super exciting. And diving into the world of trading was something new to me. And you and I think we spent a few months, towards the end of that run, kind of going through charts and getting an idea of what a chart was, what an indicator was. We were in some of the same groups together, and then the bear market struck, and I was pretty much out. I was obviously living a life and having a career and extremely busy doing things on my end. And like most people in a bear market, you lose the excitement. And
yeah, for sure.
Come the beginning of this year, we sort of reconnected on this crypto deal, and I've since moved out of the career I was in, and I'm basically going full-time trading this market and learning as much as I can to prepare for the next one.
Yeah, right on. That's kind of like me. I guess I would describe it as, well, first, obviously we do go way back, and even to our high school days. And you saw me go to engineering school and what all happened there. And I guess from there, I was 20 years corporate America doing engineering and whatever, went through business school, and then, doing a lot of work, oil and gas stuff, and in different capacities, but never really knew what a chart was. And I was making trades. I even got into trading options, and I was making options trades totally on my gut, thinking, because I had an app or whatever it was, maybe an account somewhere, but I started trading options, and I was looking at that little teeny chart they give you where it's like,
yeah,
I don't know, 12 hours in a line chart. And you're like, I mean, literally gambling my life savings away. And I just was saying things like, SPY is going up and I'm going to buy options, and got wrecked and kept getting wrecked. And I'll never forget having to lay down that account statement with my wife at the end of the year going into tax season to tell her, like, hey, by the way, we have this as a write-off now. That was a big day. I'll never forget that. That was terrible, because I had to fess up how much I lost. And I'll never forget, she was like, well, at least we didn't have to sell the house. And I'm like, but no, we didn't. It was good, but it was part of, like, that's the thing really on this journey, is like losing your way to winning, right? And so we all have that in our past. Like, we get into things, we get wrecked, whatever, you rebound, you climb out of it, and you learn. And if you keep doing that and you stay in the game, in my opinion, you get to a point, and I don't think the process ever ends, but you do get to a point where you become successful, or at least profitable. and you start making trades that are winning trades, and you get yourself to you work yourself to profitability.
Yeah, absolutely.
But right, so getting into crypto, honestly, I got into it from more of a fundamental aspect of like listening, because again, listening to a lot of people, it was the dollar's crashing, banks are collapsing, everything's going, to hell in a handbasket. Get out now while you can, and crypto's your savior, and it's gonna. I basically ran to crypto because I was fearful of being in dollars. Right.
Wow.
Right. In 2017, I started, like getting into the space. It's like, yes, I thought it is the future of, of finance and of all things, really, the blockchain and everything. I do believe it's our future, but I didn't really look at it as a tradable market until probably like the end of the bull market, right? Where I started saying like, wow, like I need to think of this as a trader. So how do I learn to trade? And so I went through a lot of different courses and a lot of different systems and processes. And I went through a lot of the stuff like moving averages and Bollinger Bands and candlesticks. And I even had this course where it was learn to trade on the like 1 minute chart, basically. But it was where you sign up, and if you're successful enough based on your ranking and your rating, then you can trade with their money. But it was on their platform, and you had to push all these keys. It was like Control B for buy. And so it wasn't my platform. It wasn't my chart. It wasn't my setup. And there were coaches and everything, but it never clicked for me. And so I had to go through that. And so I unsubscribed from that. And then I was doing on TradeStation, I found a simulator. So I opened up a basic account with TradeStation, enough to get the simulator package. And a friend of mine was also sim trading, and we were trading gold and futures. And so through that process, we were teaching each other different things, and mostly moving averages, and mostly like he was a lot more like Bollinger Band moving averages. And I kept seeing things, especially when I was trading gold, because I guess it was maybe the period I was trading, and it was a year or two ago. But when I got into the chart and I kept seeing the same thing over and over, I started actually to program, and there's Pine Editor in TradingView. And I started to program what I wanted to show as my indicator, as if like I would say, you see these things, you take this action, right? And so I was like, every time I see this over and over and over, every time I see this, I want to go short. Every time I see that, I want to go long. Well, what happened was I started into the programming side of it. And what I realized was I was basically reverse engineering or writing the code for the moving average, right? And so, because moving average is basically, it's just math, right? But it's basically like you look back a certain number of candles, and it's like advancers and decliners, and then it's averages of that. But what I couldn't get was there's a certain art to what I've developed over time. And I needed to be able to finesse it a bit. It wasn't so like hard and fast all the time that I could just write code and forget it. Yeah. I think there's some of that I think you can do. But what I learned was, and we'll talk about the trading system or whatever later, but what I learned was I could do this as long as I stuck to a certain set of rules, right? And so as part of what JEDIOSHI Warrior is in the discipline and the mindset aspect, I had to build that and learn that over time. And so, back to kind of my deal here, what we're working on is, I taught college when I was a senior. I taught a dynamics class, and that's like calc-based physics, right? And I had to do it sort of off the books because the professor, he let me do it. I couldn't actually teach his class. I had to teach at Tuesdays and Thursday nights, but I wrote and graded all of his tests and quizzes, and I taught as many people would show up as possible on Tuesdays and Thursday night. And so I love teaching, and I love teaching what I feel that what I have a gift or a skill in, and what I've learned. And just over the last 4 years of becoming serious, going from trading options on an app, right? Like totally gut gambling, right? Going from gambling, not having a freaking clue, to now, like you and I talked maybe a month ago or so, it was like, man, look at this chart. What does it tell you? Now go show this to someone that's never traded before, someone that doesn't know a chart. The chart does not speak to that person, right? So
that's right.
We look at charts now, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is what this tells me. This is what that tells me. And I think what I've found is that there are a lot of people that are in my shoes a few years ago that want to learn how to read a chart. How do I read a chart? And then step two, like, how do I become a trader? And then how do I become a master trader? And full disclosure, I'm not a master trader. I'm someone that's made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot along the way, and someone that loves teaching and someone that loves trading and wants to help people become their best trader. So that's kind of the story, man.
And it's a great story. And you are absolutely way more advanced on the charts than I am. And really where I'm coming from this is the world of athletics.
Right.
And, I spent a good deal of my adult life pursuing a career in professional golf. And then I transitioned into coaching college golf. And when you're in the world of athletics, you can't approach anything passively, right?
Right.
Your preparation, your mindset has to be, you have to constantly be approaching things aggressively. And so as a quote swing trader, like we've been for a while, it's what I've found is that it's an extremely passive mindset, and it doesn't work for me. And I think that's really what pushed me towards wanting to learn these charts, wanting to understand what the indicators meant, how the chart was working day to day. You and I have talked about this a million times. I needed a better approach to managing my portfolio rather than just sitting back and sort of riding through the ups and downs. It just didn't work for me. It didn't work for my mindset. I don't approach anything that way in my life.
Right.
And so,
That's right.
I think your system it's beautiful in its simplicity, and obviously we'll get into that, but it just gives us an opportunity. I made a trade last night, got out of a particular trade just by using your system pretty easily. And I don't know, I think a lot of people will appreciate that, understanding what the chart looks like and saying, hey, look, I can actually make this move on my own, and I don't need anybody to tell me how to do it or why I'm doing it. And that's key. And I think how I can help people sort of progress through this is understanding how to take control of your emotions, and then taking control of your portfolio and having some confidence in doing that. Right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure.
That's a big deal. And I think having worked with athletes and having been an athlete myself for a long time, there's some core principles that you have to embrace just from, your mindset, your day-to-day mindset. And I think we'll get into a lot of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We will. Well, man, you want to look at some charts or what?
Yeah, I think it's probably a great idea to start with some of the bigger things that we're looking at in the market structure, and kind of where we're at. I think that's what people probably want to see the most.
Mm-hmm.
How can we look at this market right now? How can we predict what the next move is, and what can we expect to see?
Right on. Yeah. So we'll just look at Bitcoin here, and we'll kind of look around. This is obviously the weekly, and where we are. Obviously, we have a correction. We're in a correction period. When you and I look at this together, we see, weekly, obviously we're corrected. Are we done correcting here? You and I talk about this, constantly, but, there's a chance we're not. So maybe we'll look at that today. But if you look at, let's see, daily, one of the things, and I showed this to you earlier, but if you go back here into the March, April, May time period, right? You have candles like this, igniting, right? Signaling the end of a correction. We haven't seen that yet. Not to say we won't, but that's what I'm looking for or anticipating. Until we see that, and you and I, when we look at this, when we start kind of laying some lines on here, we start looking at, hey, resistance line, RSI, resistance line here, and you and I, well, this is my number one indicator, and really my only indicator, really. But when you start applying this, or part of the trade system that we have now, I'm not convinced that we're bullish until we're above this line, right? Like, for me, the bulls are not in control until at least we come above this line. And for full control, we need both that line and the price line to be broken. Let's go back and look. I think one of the things for me is, we can look at any of these corrections, but what I was thinking was we zoom in on this area back here, and I can walk you through kind of how I thought about, and obviously we were talking all throughout the day in this time period, I'll never forget. But if I were to talk somebody through this time period, how I look at it is you have corrections and breakouts, corrections and breakouts, corrections and breakouts until you don't.
Yep.
And the last one here, and I would use, we'll get into the fib, but so basically RSI down, and daily is a good way to look at it. RSI below the correction. Let me kind of get this drawn, and then we'll look at, it's a little sloppy, but so here we go. Like RSI, again, one of the, you hear me say this all the time, but RSI precedes price, right? RSI precedes. So you see how the RSI broke first here?
Sure.
Right. And then price broke. And as soon as price broke, right? Or as soon as price breaks here, I'd say, boom, now bulls are in control. But see how I mean, you could have, this way doesn't like pick a top or bottom, but you're saying like who is in control. And that's my biggest thing that I try to teach someone or try to help them with. And when they're looking at a chart is you have to figure out who's in the control, who's got the ball, because you want to trade with the person, you want to trade with the group that has the ball or has control, right? So bulls, before this correction, bulls, obviously, and what's neat is you could draw, obviously they were holding this trend line, right? You had a high with high RSI, you broke the trend and falling RSI. So bears took over. Back here, RSI breakout, or RSI broke the downtrend. RSI price lagged but followed. Up, next correction down, same thing. RSI breaks. Now this is a little shorter, a little faster. RSI breaks, bulls break, or price breaks. Bulls have control. Yeah. Next one, RSI breaks. Real close to price. Price breaks out. You run up here. You have a top. You can keep drawing these lines, right? Like it's just all about support resistance lines and who is in control, right? So up at this top, and let's get into fib in a second. What I want to show you is all throughout this run, right? And this is what you and I kept going back to. All throughout this run, what was going on with RSI?
Yep. Falling trend.
Falling. Yep. Weaker, 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 weakest. Done. Right? So, what is I going to show you? So let's look at like the fib, right? We always go back to the fib. And maybe we'll get into this later, but I wanted to show you like, so every one of these corrections, I would do this, right? We would always do this. Okay. Got to get back through these levels, right? With one of our keys being 702, and kind of one of our guys kind of taught us that, but back through the 702, got it, cleared it. Back through the 702, cleared it. Back through the 702, cleared it. Back through the 702, cleared it. Back to the 702, rejected. Yep. And weaker, 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 weaker. You're done. This is done. This whole, like you could have drawn this to this or whatever, however you want to draw it, or for this final one. Yeah. In this final set, like take
that move was done.
Yeah, like take the body of the candle here, and like if you break this trend and you can't break 702, your RSI is weak from down here, and you've seen it been weakening this whole time on this whole uptrend. Boom, bears take control. And how long they took control? I think that was 60 or 70 days, right?
Yeah,
pretty painful summer for a lot of people.
Yes, sir.
And all the way down to here. But then let me show you again down here. Watch this. Now this was a fake out. This is really interesting. When you look at this RSI, right? You could have been like, dude, we got it. We're up, and price was up, but it faked out. So basically, if you're an active trader, you have to be cognizant of that. If you break back down, then sometimes it's quick and sometimes it's not. But what I can show you is once we finally broke it, once you finally broke this trend of all these candles underneath this line, and once you broke your RSI, let me just do that. Once you came above here and came above here, bulls regain control. See that break right there?
Yep.
That break right there. So to me, you had RSI break like maybe a day before, but then once on that candle tip, once you broke above here with a full body and a close, closes are important in dailies or close or in all candles. But once you got above this line on price, bulls were able to take control, and they took it. So here we are again, right? So what do we have? And everybody's like, what's going on? When is this going to end? Right? It's painful. I mean, when we were up here, man, you and I were expecting, we were expecting some of this, but this went beyond my expectation anyways.
Totally.
I was expecting pop. We had fractals. We were studying this region back here. We were going into this time period with then a dip and then up. So I was expecting nice alt action, a nice tradable interval here, a nice final alt action, and then done, right? But here we are. And so what we saw here was, you had this, one of the classics of all time, higher high on lower RSI, right? That's like my love.
Sure. Yep.
Of a signal, because it's the same inverted too on bottoms.
Right.
Higher high, lower RSI. That means you're not as strong, right? So this push up here, this punch up here is on less strength. Now, can it get there? It might grow to that, but you have to watch the candles and how they close and how they react. So obviously it couldn't hold a high. It came back here. It was giving you a warning signal, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Right here. So again, if you invert the go long signal to a sell signal, then what you get here is you get an early warning on a rejection, and then you get a price breakdown. And so that was what, November 16th, and here we are. So that's kind of how I would review Bitcoin in a nutshell. And then kind of what I want to do is start doing this, on the regular, right? It's just dive in and do charts and do, just take a look at charts and what are we seeing and how's everything going? So, right. So what are you seeing, man?
Well, I think it's important to note too that, I think it just in generally speaking, I am a believer that the Bitcoin top is in. And so I'm proceeding under that assumption. I'm watching that retrace to the 702, if you want to draw that up there.
Yeah.
from the last local top, that we have to watch that like a hawk, right? I mean, what will probably happen if we get a typical retrace like we have in the past, we'll probably touch 618.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe come back down and then make one last push to the 702, which if you're in the altcoin
we do like
market,
that, right? Like that,
right?
That, like that, right?
That's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my new expectation of what's going to happen in the near term. There's no reason for me to believe otherwise. Once we lost 53,000, that was kind of the critical support level that we needed to maintain, our momentum moving up. If we're using the past as our leader, as our example, because in all previous Bitcoin bull runs, we had a breakdown similar to what we had this time, in that 53,000 area was going to hold the support and we were going to move on. And so once that broke down, that invalidated all of that to me. And so I think it's very possible that we see an even lower dip to try to retest some support levels around the 37, 38 level. And then maybe a run to the 618, then to the 702. But honestly, I think that should be exciting for most people if you're in the altcoin market, because this is the time when those, all of your laggers start to move forward. And
right. So if we do that, then it's more like that than whatever retrace. That's not drawn properly. But yeah, so basically if we do that, right? If we correct, this can't hold or whatever happens and we get another fall, then hopefully, say it's down to there, which will be scary, right? That's going to be really scary because it's going to be, that's what, 25% down on I think on total. But anyways, yeah, if we go down there, then no, it should be pretty much up only, right?
Yeah, but I think the reason why 38, 39 is important is because that I believe, if my numbers are correct, is about a 43% drop from the top, which the first drop from the top in 2017, I think was the equivalent, about 43%. Somewhere in there, right?
It is 43%.
Something like that. So, and I think that would be the equivalent drop that you had in 2017. So yes, while scary, I think it's necessary before we get our retrace. So, but I think it's also important just to note the general trend that you're in so that you have some sort of expectation of what's going to happen. Right. I refuse to sit back and hope at this point for, 100,000 Bitcoin or whatever it is that you expect to have happen. I want to operate day by day. And so now my assumption is that we're going into the retrace. Alts should pop off. That's how I'm proceeding currently.
Right. Yeah, man, that was, like you said, getting into more actively trading, like that was the same for me. I've been holding assets for so long and down for so long. And finally, being that this is my full-time job, it's like, you've got to pay yourself at some point, right? And you've got to like your
Yeah.
job. And this is, maybe a few months ago or whatever, but it's like, dude, wake up. Your job is to take money from this market. Like that's how you're gonna get money in your bank account, right?
That's right.
And there is expectations of potential you know levels out here for some of these assets that they can reach. But like between now and then, like I woke up a while ago and realized, like, I have got to take full control. I have got to start taking the safety off. You have got to start taking action. You see SHIB at 8,500, right? At 4.236 off the previous cycle high.
Yeah.
What do? Well, up till then, I've been like just cheering it on and getting excited, right? Like, oh my God, I think this is it. I think this is when we just run to the moon, right?
Yeah.
Well, since then, I changed everything. It was, OMG, done, $20. You saw my target. We planned that whole thing. And it was OMG as close to 20 out as possible. Some other moves, ENJ, or CLR, or CRV, sorry.
CRV,
and CRV, ENJ, saw some of that, got into some other positions or whatever, but it's been a lot more active. And that's just the way I'm going to roll from now on, because now when we look at this market, and granted, I do expect things to, once we find, like you said, if the bottom's not in, if this happens to be our bottom, then after that, then I think we'll have some really nice tradable action. But it's, for me, I will be taking action, right? Like I will be saying it's time, like to actually, like take profit. People say take profits. I say like, like get out of your position, sell it.
Do you know how hard it is to hold a position for 2 or 3 years and then sell it if you've never sold anything? You're not in any sort of a mindset to do that. And if you're going to sit and wait for a target, trade your portfolio, do it however you want to. But if you're in an asset for 2 or 3 years and you have that $100 target or whatever it is in the back of your head, and you get to say $78, and you can be sitting in a beautiful profit. But do you know how hard it's going to be to pull the trigger on that sell? It's going to be next to impossible, because you've been waiting for that $100 for so long. And the next thing you know, the bottom falls out and you've lost the entire profit that you just sat through for 2.5 years. So yeah, man, I mean, I think the idea is, let's get really good at selling and pulling profit from the market. And if you're in a position that's just ripping and the chart's telling you to hold it, then you just hold it.
Yeah. Right. But as long as the chart stays strong. If you start seeing weakness in the chart, right? Like here, this is the daily. This isn't even the 1 hour or the 4 hour. There's obvious weakness here, right? It's like the charts will tell you, right?
I mean, you could go back to the previous Bitcoin high when we were talking daily. Like, this thing feels incredibly toppy. This does not feel good. Is it possible that the Bitcoin top is in? I mean, with those
you and I back
we
here,
talking
right?
about daily, every day.
Is the top in? Is this the top? Are we? Oh, when we saw the 702, and then we saw a break, and then you're like, I guess that was the top down here, right?
But these lessons, dude, you have to learn these lessons before you're ready to take control of your portfolio and start making these moves on your own. You have to.
You have to, or else you'll learn them in a bigger way later, right?
Yeah,
it'll be more painful. Right. Hopefully, you learn them when you're trading with small numbers.
Yeah, and then the other thing about holding an asset, it's you actually start to become emotionally attached to it in certain ways. I mean, we've talked about that in the past, where we were holding on to Litecoin for a long time with the assumption that Litecoin was going to be this, like the savior. And
I was like Litecoin. I had Litecoin T-shirts. I hate Bitcoin. I hate Ethereum. I was drinking the Kool-Aid, man.
Right?
Now I'm like now I'm to the point, man, where I'm like, I don't want Twitter. I don't want any news. I don't want to know about projects. I just need charts, and I want my signals, and they're going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it. And that's it.
And I want to be incredibly happy to sell something. Like, that's the mindset that I'm really looking to embrace here.
Absolutely. Because like you want to, the only way to lock in that emotion, like we had when SHIB went to 8,500, right? The only way to lock that in is to sell it.
That's right.
The only way. Now, granted, like you're like, oh, what if it, there's emotion, right? And so you're like, you have to, in my world, from this day forward, or from previous few months ago, whatever. But it's like, no, we're taking action.
And full disclosure, that SHIB trade for me was one of the first that had ever gone into profit. we were looking for a liquidity swap way back in the beginning of the year. None of that stuff. I mean, that we had profit there, but that was far below the targets that we had. And
Right.
so when SHIB started running this time around, you know this obviously, but I grabbed some value there. And to your point, I put some of that money into a different trade, but I locked that emotion in, right? I still feel really good about that, even though SHIB has since dropped quite a bit. I actually preserved some value out of that trade. So it was a big deal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of those stories, but they're not quite as big as my SHIB position. Yeah. Right. But you know, I have some stories where I've like trading, and like I sold like the last one I was, you know, degen trading like some NFT, Doge NFT on whatever. I got it on Uniswap or something.
Yeah.
And they're like 8x in the weekend. And I'm like, I'm out, and I have not ever looked at the chart again.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I got my gain. Thank you very much. That's it. Dude, it could be up 1,000x right now, and I don't really want to know. I mean, like, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And that should be the lesson too. Like the way that you feel after you lock in a profit is, you know, everything else past that, you feel pretty good, unless you get out incredibly prematurely, right? And then you got to watch like a hex trade.
The hex trade. You know, I was so lucky when I found my little dust of my hex position still staked. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. Look, what did I find? I forgot.
It's a win.
I had some staked. I'm like, that's bigger than what I took out the first time.
Yep.
So, you know, but you get those too. And, you know, a lot of it's, you know, like you say, managing emotion. But like, man, from your golf coaching world to come in and say, look, like, it reminds me a lot of golf, right? When you go play golf, you're like, oh, I just hit a bad shot. I triple bogey that last hole. Like, oh, I'm not going to break 80 or whatever. And you're like, dude, no, like you have to like play what you have in front of you, and you have to like forget all that. And you have to like, I was just reading from some of your writings and stuff, but it's like, you have to play the game in front of you, and you cannot take all that baggage with you, right?
Well, the chart is a perfect example of that. If you could be a golfer and look back at a price chart just to sort of see how you were, that'd be a pretty cool way to, you know, to see your progress. And you can, in a way, there are stat programs in golf that you can use, but the key is, what are you learning from the chart? But then how are you operating day to day? You know, like moving forward, what's the next move? It's the only thing that matters.
Right.
And you can learn a lot from the chart, just like you can learn a lot from your past in golf. But yeah, man, I mean, having a very short memory in trading is, God, I mean, it's everything. Yeah. You have to be able to cut bait on a trade if it's bad. I mean, like, I'm learning that as we go along here.
Yeah.
Like cutting bait is a big deal in this world.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Well, man, did you have anything specific you want to go through? I guess I have a funny story for you if you want to hear it. Kind of a mindset thing. I know we get into mindset. We'll get into mindset a lot, right?
Let's go. Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. So we had our morning session, and then I was cleaning out my daughter's fish tank, right?
Is that the story?
Believe it or not, it gets better. It gets better.
Okay.
I mean, this thing got bad fast, and I didn't know what happened. So I'm cleaning it up.
Yeah.
I'm lugging this little, it's like 2.5 gallon, whatever, glass thing around. And man, it's this little betta fish, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
But my daughter, she like, when we say grace at the dinner table, she's like, and thank you for Bella and our family. And I'm like, you know, it's her fish, right?
Yeah. Sure.
So anyways, I put it in a little Tupperware container on this towel, and I go and take the tank, and I'm like, whatever, rinsing it, getting it all cleaned out. So I'm in the kitchen, and I'm like, well, I might as well take this tank back. I conditioned the water. That's like, you're supposed to do this stuff. And I'm trying to figure it all out. So I take it back there, and I look over, and there's hardly any water in the Tupperware thing. I'm like, so it like had this little crack in it, and it was leaking out on the towel. And like Bella's in there like flapping around, like dying on me. I'm like, so I run into the sink and I pour water in it. I'm like, there you go. And then I'm like, crap. And I just throw her in the fish tank. I'm like, I hope you make it. The water was pretty warm. But then I call my wife, and I'm like, hey babe, check this out. I'm like, I told her a story, and she goes, you almost killed Bella. And I go, oh no, I saved her life. That's the mindset. Man. That's the up only mindset, right? No, I saved a life. Did not almost kill her.
Watch out for those cracks, man.
Watch out, man. I know, like, Right? Who knows? Who knew? All right, man. Well, I guess that's it for this one. We'll get a live stream going or something, and we'll keep this rolling in some capacity. We'll get it all figured out and see what else we need to do.
Absolutely,
But,
man. It'll be fun. And I think people are really going to enjoy, especially your perspective on things, because you are a number crunching, data crunching machine. So that coupled with a little bit of mindset training, I think can really help. So, I mean, for anybody who's looking to learn this stuff a little bit better, this is definitely a place to be.
Sweet, man. I agree. All right, guys. We'll catch you next time.